Greetings, Algo artisans, and welcome to the November the 10th weekly market forecast. Actually recording this on the 9th, and we're just going to plow through the charts and what I think is going to happen this week. We have the Euro versus the dollar, GBP, USD, USDJPY, SP 500, Dow, and NASDAQ futures, Bitcoin, Solana, gold, and silver. We're going to start with the news right now. Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause and read this disclaimer. Okay, so those of you familiar with the show know that we take a look at what's happening on Forex Factory. And this is not just for Forex charts. This matters for stocks, crypto, you name it, because these are items that happen that we can plan on. This is government data usually, or some private data. We know when it's going to come out. We don't know what the data is going to say, but it gives us the opportunity to know when the volatility is coming and how we might want to handle that. Monday is going to be quiet. It's a holiday in the US, Veterans Day. I will be working, it just won't be trading. Tuesday the 12th, we have at the European Open some British pound claimant count change. That's employment data. And then all the way until 7:30 p.m. EST, we have some Australian wage price index data coming out. That's quarter over quarter, so it might hit the Aussie dollar pretty hard. Wednesday the 13th, we have the big one for the week, core CPI month over month, CPI month over month, and year over year. So these particular data will hit the market pretty hard, chances are, especially if the actual is different to the forecast. So if you look here on the right, you'll see some numbers that are the forecast, and the market more or less prices those in. So if the number is about the same as that, you might see some volatility hit the market as money that was sidelined comes in now that the data is out. But if that data comes out and is vastly different from those numbers, the market can move quite precipitously. Generally, what you're going to get outside of any major upset, major unexpected numbers here, is the market's going to fluctuate a bit and then go back to what it was probably going to do anyway, and I tend to wait for that to happen. Let's move forward. 6 p.m. EST, RBA, Governor Bullock speaks, so if you're trading the Aussie dollar, you got to watch out for that. Any of the USD data tends to affect most markets. Any of the non-USD data is going to generally just affect the market in that country. For example, with the AUD data, that's probably not going to affect US stocks. It would have to be extremely unexpected data. For example, right after RBA Governor Bullock speaks, you've got at 7:30 p.m. EST, employment data coming out. If that's really different than what is expected, chances are it's just going to affect Australia and Australian stocks and that currency. Probably not going to affect stocks in most other countries unless it's extremely severe. Okay, next day, as usual, every Thursday we have data come out at 8:30 a.m. EST. That's PPI in this case. That's not every week. And that is the data related to CPI. So let's back up a little bit. CPI is Consumer Price Index. It is an inflationary measure, and it is probably the primary input used by the Fed as far as what they're going to do with interest rates. And of course, that's the price of money. And the FOMC was last week. That was a 25 basis point cut. So when this CPI and PPI data comes out, that's going to make the market think that the Fed might do this or that the next time they cut rates. So the market really might use this data to anticipate big moves, and a lot of volatility could hit, especially again if it's different than what's expected. So the PPI is Producer Price Index, and the CPI the day before is Consumer Price Index. And I did once do a pretty deep look at whether or not those correlate to each other, whether or not you can use one to predict the other, and my data said pretty much not really. Very hard to determine how some of that data might come out, and by the way, we all know that some of this data is just a little bit fudged. Most likely, can't say that for sure, but I'm pretty sure. Fed Chair Powell speaks at 3 p.m. EST. That's not too long before market closes, and so we have to watch out because everybody's going to microanalyze what he says. It's just after the inflation data, so he's probably going to have something to say about that maybe. It's a panel discussion, Global Perspectives. It's hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. And again, that is just a scenario where people are really going to watch what he says and microanalyze it. If he says anything that hints at what they might do with their policy, the market could move. So I tend to not trade until he's done speaking. And then similar exact scenario over in the UK for the British pound. An hour after that, Governor Bailey is going to speak at the Mansion House dinner in London. But if you're trading the pound, same kind of scenario as when Powell speaks. GBP month over month, that's going to be the European Open. So any pound related trades might get affected. 6:30 a.m. That's 8:30 a.m. EST, 6:30 a.m. Mountain. You'll see retail sales data is going to come out on Friday. And again, that could hit the market heavy if it's vastly different than expected. Now, one thing to note is that now the elections are over, right? What does that mean? That means that there's possibly a little bit less pressure on keeping the numbers looking a certain way. Prior to the election, it might be that they were making the numbers look a certain way because they wanted to look good for the people running, right? They wanted Kamala's White House House or Biden's White House, whatever you want to call it, to have done a good job. So when this data comes out and it looks really bad, it doesn't bode well for them at the election. So they're going to exert political force, political influence on this data to look good or bad. And unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in. And that's a theory. I'm pretty sure it's true. So know that if there has been a very different to reality announcement in the past, the numbers coming out this month might kind of make up for that. We could see some surprises in any of these announcements on the USD side and effectively the whole world. So again, this is why I tend not to trade on those days, at least until that data is out. I tend to be out of any short-term trades until that data is out. Let's move on to the charts. Now, these charts today are probably not going to take too long to look at. There is some change from last week. I left a lot of the drawings up from last week so that everybody could see how what I said either occurred or didn't occur, right? Of course, you could just go look at last week's show. Some of these are a little changed because I go over these every day. There's a bit of downward pressure on this pair. I think price is going to range until it pops up, but at this point, the more I look at the algos, the more I wonder if in fact it may not be able to bounce. And what that's probably going to result in is a lot of ranging price action. It's a little too early to tell, but it looks like it wants to range between $1 and 6.8 cents and $1 and 8.2 cents. That's what it looks like it wants to do. We don't have enough data really yet to define that. That said, when something ranges for a number of days, the breakout tends to be pretty strong, right? So we might see price break below a much larger consolidation here. I'm betting it's probably not going to, only because it's such a high time frame consolidation. That's a big thing to break. The elections are over, anything can happen. I do think it'll revert back up, but you know what? It may not. So I am not shorting this until it breaks below, and I'm not going to long this until it breaks out of its current possible consolidation. I'm going to do some day trades and scalps, and as the thing forms up, I'm going to go ahead and make different theses around it. GBP USD, otherwise known as the cable, is very similar. Again, I have a either up or down scenario listed out here, but I do think we're going to see, just like the euro, very similar chart for very similar reasons, a bit of a ranging price action between what I think is going to be maybe about $1.30 and on the low end anywhere from $1.28.7 and $1.28.4, just based on some of the prior price action here. So I could amend this just a little bit to reflect that, and I do think price may rock back and forth until it doesn't, and I'll treat it the same way as I do the euro. Wait for the breakout, go from there, or trade the reversals in the range. Again, the more I look at the high time frame data on these algos here, the more it seems to me the price may want to go down, and we'll see what happens as it happens. But I do not trade breakouts until they occur. I don't short supports, and I don't long ceilings. I wait for those breakouts to happen. I don't like to go against structure outside of certain circumstances. USDJPY, again, I think we're going to see some ranging price action. In this case, though, high time frame looks rather bullish because the USD is rather bullish, but let's not forget that it could flip around and turn because the Bank of Japan has said that they're probably going to hike rates and make their currency stronger. So we might just see a lot of ranging price action. And now that the election is over, it might be that the Bank of Japan is willing to do things that are maybe in Japan's interest at this point. I think the election is going to reflect a period of nationalism overall for a lot of countries, including the US. And so I think as countries become more nationalistic, they'll make moves that are not quite as concerned with what other countries worry about, and I have no problem with that. Yes, there may be some carnage in the markets. To me, that's completely fine. I make money on carnage. Up or down, I like it. I just want up or down. Okay, let's go over to the indices. We got the SP 500 futures popping up all-time highs, and I don't see any reason for it to stop. It could pull back briefly and head up, but we are now heading towards the Santa rally, which tends to be very bullish all the time. So we may see a pullback or not. It could just kind of head up pretty strong with some minor pullbacks, or it could pull back, as I drew before right here, to the top to its prior all-time high to grab liquidity. But I do see prices heading up outside of any kind of crazy news that would cause this to pull back. For the moment, I'm bullish. Same with the Dow, same story, bullish for the same reasons, possible pullback for the same reasons to its all-time high, so it could either head up or it could just head up with some minor pullbacks. Targets are right now at about 44.5 and 45.7. NASDAQ, all the same reasons, bullish for the same reasons, pull back to all-time high for the same reasons, so we could just see a straight up move here, or we could see a pullback, or any sort of combination of those two things, right? Outside of any crazy news. Targets are 21,630-ish and 22,400. Okay, let's go to Bitcoin. Still in my trade. This is a high time frame trade. I don't expect it to pay out for as long as a few weeks or even a month or two. I've got this currently marked out to take all the way through December. Bitcoin, after an all-time high break after the halving, tends to go pretty quick. It tends to really push up. And if you look at the price action here on the daily, you'll notice that it's just continues to push up. Didn't get that pullback that I was talking about breakout, and it may happen. There may be a pullback. Most breakouts tend to pull back, but this is Bitcoin, and it's Bitcoin in the bull market, and it's right after an election, and it could just continue going up. But I will be looking to buy pullbacks on this, and that is that. Simple as that. Not much more to talk about for me, just based on where we are in the bull cycle and the market, and the algos are extremely bullish. The same with Solana. Solana looks very similar. We might get a bit of a pullback in Solana because it seems to be outperforming just a bit as compared to Bitcoin. Price is consolidating above this prior high, but below the yearly high, which is up at about $210. I do expect Solana to break that, and it really could just keep going up, just like Bitcoin. It may not pull back at all, right? If there's no pullback, it's probably just going to look like this and eventually have a strong breakout. Very likely seeing that. And if not, we might see a pullback and then that strong breakout after that. But based on where we are in the cycle, my primary thesis is just sideways and up. Let's go over to gold. Now, things have slowed down for the yellow metal. I think that we're just looking at a bit of a pullback to grab some liquidity. And of course, the election is now over. So there's a lot of uncertainty gone in the market. So as the indices continue up, at least I think they will, gold seems to be pulling back because uncertainty is now out of the market, at least compared to prior to the election. And it seems that gold is going to consolidate where it is and go sideways. And it could do so for who knows how long. It's hard to say. It could continue to go up. And if it did continue to go up, I have targets. My next targets as it stands are going to be 28.50 and 29.10 or so. And I still hold that it may well cross 3,000 this year, but we're going to see what happens. There's a lot of interest to keep metals from going too high. I do expect this to go sideways for the moment. And whichever way it breaks out of this little mini consolidation, if it even happens, is going to give us some clues. Not a lot of excitement going on there. I do think it's going to stay above 2,600, which is the bottom of this area here, but I think the price will go sideways until a decision is made. And very similar to silver. The COMEX doesn't really seem to want silver to go over $32. We've seen it knocked down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times going back earlier this year, and there are some theories as to why that is. Come over to algofactory.tech. We can tell you all about it because we do have people who know a lot about silver on the inside. Meantime, I think we'll see similar price action to gold, sideways until it's not sideways. And this could go for quite a while. I don't really have a lot of data telling us much right now. If anything, I would be taking more of a low time frame look. Come on over to algofactory.tech. We teach people how to build trading algorithms. And when I say algorithm, I don't mean computer coding. It's just teaching you how to build a trading system and how to make sure it works. It's not that complex to do. It's just that you got to put in the work to do it. That's going to be the primary driver for success, is whether or not you're willing to do the work. Come on into algofactory.tech and we'll show you what's going on. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.